What's up, everyone? Stormy here, or Alex. I keep trying to figure out how I want to do my intro, and it always just goes any which way. I feel like I have not been on YouTube in forever, even though I was literally just recording Animal Crossing on my gaming channel 2 days ago. Check, I don't know, a link in the description if I can remember. Check that out, because I mean, if you like not family-friendly gaming content, I have that channel where I've been playing Animal Crossing. But if you want, maybe I could do an Animal Crossing tour, like some kind of like town tour on this channel, maybe. I'll think about it. I think that would actually be pretty cool. Let me know, because I could set it up just like I do with my gaming channel, the face cam in the corner, and then I could do a tour of my town, because I don't know, I think that would be pretty cool filler content for this channel. So maybe you'll get a bonus video this week, I don't know, we'll find out. So I wanted to talk about me, obviously, but I wanted to talk more about my Demiboy identity, and what that means, as in, like, Demiboy is part boy, and part something else. It's usually not specified in the name. Usually it's up to the other person. Very commonly, the other part is genderless. For me, that's kind of what I thought, but I wanted to sort of break down what I think of myself in the context of gender, and maybe kind of come up with, I don't know, I want to put all of my thoughts together in one video on how I think about that. I also wanted to talk about some new labels, some new gender labels that I found that I thought were super interesting. I went over that in another video, going over, like, gender labels that resonate with me. I think it was kind of its own video by itself, but this one here is gonna kind of have two different topics. So breaking down the Demiboy identity for myself, and talking about labels that I found that really resonate with me. Breaking it down to what I know. By the way, this is a really good, like, exercise if you're ever questioning yourself. Don't stress over trying to find that missing piece first, or that missing label first. Break it down to what you know first, and figure out, like, what you already know about yourself. Like, what can you explain the best, or what do you have the necessary, what do you have the language for, I guess, is the best way to put that. I know that my gender is partially male. I know that I am predominantly male. I've always believed that. The other part of Demiboy, part boy, part whatever, definitely not female. Maybe genderless, but I'm not sure. Because I don't know if there's ever a day that I feel completely genderless. Sometimes neutral, which that's separate from genderless, definitely. And I know that I'm not, like, I know that I don't have more than one gender. And I know that, like, for some people that, like, it doesn't make sense to say, like, Demiboy, part this, part that. But that doesn't mean two genders. Two genders is two distinct whole genders side by side. Either, like, you fluctuate between the two, or they are happening together as, like, two distinct things. Whereas Demiboy is part one thing, part another thing, to make one gender with multiple parts. So that's what I have always believed. Like, it's one gender, two parts, not multiple genders. I wrote down that my gender's not fluid or flux. Flux means fluctuating. Fluid means moving between more than one. But I find the parts of my gender to be distinct. I don't find myself being fluid between them, only switching very solidly between them. For a lot of people, it's very fluid. There's a lot of in-between that, I guess that's, like, the focus, is that there's, man, how do I explain this? I am the worst at explaining these things, but it's important to figure out the distinction between a lot of these words and a lot of this language, but someone who is fluid between multiple genders always has that that in-between where it's not male, not female, it's something blurry in between, or not male, not genderless, something in between. Like, I don't feel like I experience that. I don't think I have an in-between state. It's either very much one or the other. What the other is, I have no idea. That's the point of this video. And also, I don't think that being masculine or feminine or neutral has anything to do with my gender. I don't think it defines my gender. I don't think that... I don't think it is a defining feature or even like an aspect of my gender. I find it to be a completely separate idea. Like, I have my gender, but then separate from that is gender presentation. So I'm not necessarily looking for like terminology that ties that in, because I find gender presentation to be separate. Some people find it to be a very intrinsic part of their identity, and that's fine. Like that works for a lot of people. On this channel, I'm almost always talking about myself, my own experiences, and my own language that I use to describe my identity. So this has nothing to do with how I think about other people. They have their own ways of defining and explaining their gender's lack thereof, and I think that's just as valid. Labels I've considered for this other part of Demiboy, things like agender or genderless, just meaning like not having a gender, neutrois, which is a neutral gender. I don't feel like I'm in a good place to like explain that really, but gender neutral is different than genderless. It's just really hard for me to explain, so you may have to actually look that up. But neutroi, that word's been around a while. It just means like a neutral gender. I spelled that wrong. There's another term, maverick. Yes, it is French, and it means, I think it's outside of male, female, and anything derivative of the two, while still being specifically gendered. I should look that up because I made a note to explain the terminology and never wrote it down. I did write it down. Alright, so maverick is entirely independent of male, female, masculine, feminine, or anything derivative of those, while still being neither genderless nor gender neutral. So it is not a genderless or gender neutral experience, but it is outside of the scope of male, female, feminine, masculine, and anything that would derive from that. I also wrote gender void, which means just void of gender. A lot of people like to use that rather than genderless or gender neutral or neutroi or agender. Like, people like to use the word gender void. It's similar to agender, though I think void of gender implies missing, but I'm not actually entirely sure. If anyone like identifies with that label, like, let me know, because I don't always know specifically what it is referring to. These are just like terms that kind of like might fit what I'm looking for, though not exactly. And I had explained way back in the beginning of the channel, sort of, the celestial gender alignments, which is like the space-themed gender alignments that someone had come up with. I particularly liked Neptunian. It seemed to fit the mostly male and partly genderless. Like, it has a similar definition to that. And I wrote down Mercurian, which is, it is soft gendered energy with no connection to masculinity or femininity. It's gendered, but like it's very similar to neutroi now that I think about it. Like, it's just these labels here talk about masculinity and femininity rather than man and woman, or manhood, womanhood. I mean, so basically I kind of find the other part to be either completely genderless or neutral. I think neutral might be the most fitting label, the most fitting like word for that. So I have a few new terms that really resonate with me. I might not necessarily use them, but they're a really good basis for just finding something that might fit my gender experience. I know a lot of people don't like micro labels. They don't like newly coined gender terms, but like on this channel, we support that. We are supportive of new language, new words. At one point, transgender was a brand new word. Agender was a brand new word. Like, people make up words to describe experiences and to fill an empty space where there is no language to describe these things. If they can't find something that works, they make something that works, which is the beautiful thing about the queer community. And like, I'm always going to support making up all these crazy new labels because that's just how it's always been. So I have this new, it's right at the top of my list, I have this new word that I found called intramask. I wish I could remember the name of the person who created this term, because on Tumblr I had recreated their flag in high def so that like they could use it for whatever they wanted to. And it basically means encompassing infinite, largely varied feelings of masculinity. It is the whole spectrum of masculinity. I don't know if it specifically has ties to manhood. I never liked using masculine and male interchangeably. That's never been my thing, but I think it is just like, I mean, it's kind of like pangender, meaning like every gender within your own culture and experiences, like experiencing every gender available to you. I think it's kind of like that, but geared toward masculinity. There's another word here, nixveer. It's Latin based. That's where the veer comes from. That is a Latin masculine noun, and it's both genderless and male. It's sort of like what I'm going for with the part Demiboy, part something there, part genderless. But that's what nixveer means. But it focuses more on the genderless aspect, I think, with that nix prefix there. But I mean, I like it. It's a cool word. It's really easy to remember. It's easy to pronounce. It's not a complicated word. It's got a pretty solid definition, like easy to understand concept. I mean, a lot of people could easily go for bigender with a word like that, but people want words that specify, because when you say bigender, no one knows exactly what that means. That could be any two genders. So that's why it's very important to have language where you can describe like what it's supposed to be. And then there is a similar word, proxveer, with that masculine noun on the end again, related to male, but is something separate. So it's ties to manhood, but it's its own separate concept. It's its own separate thing. I can understand why someone might want to use this word. I imagine like a lot of trans men would appreciate a word like this, because we don't have the same experiences that cisgender men do. And like, it's important to remember that while also not denying us our manhood or our experiences with manhood. That's something I rarely see talked about in the community. And then I guess there's another term here. Like I said, I don't find masculinity or femininity like being part of my gender at all, but sometimes I'll find terms that talk about masculinity, and like, I kind of like that, and it gives me a sort of a starting point for looking for other labels. That's how I found a lot of these labels, was focusing on other labels that explained masculinity. I talked about this in another video, of course, like other labels that resonated with me. And like, this is why, like, that first video is why I found and, well, came across and learned about these new labels here. From the Celestial Gender System again, there is a term called Jupiterian named after the planet Jupiter, and it just basically means linked to masculine energy. Energy, I think, being another way of saying aligned. That's terminology that non-binary people came up with, being aligned with certain genderness without actually being that gender. A lot of non-binary people find themselves aligning with like masculinity, femininity, and separately manhood or womanhood. Like, that's common. And then if they're not, they usually say they're unaligned, but not a lot of non-binary people use that terminology. If they're non-binary, they often want to be separated from binary terminology, but I mean, that's where you get specific labels that like help explain that. Like, that's the whole point of this video, is talking about micro labels and really defining the specifics of identity. Right now, I want to put every term that I talked about in the last couple videos about this specific topic. So this one and the one where I talked about other gender labels that resonate with me, I want to put all those flags and terms on screen right now to show just like how many options there are, and that's just my own experiences. I do not have any sort of connection with womanhood. I didn't look up any kind of labels that had anything to do with femininity, really. So there's so much more. There's at least that many more flags and terms out there, plus so many more, because people are always coming up with new language. Language is always evolving, and it's kind of difficult in the more general LGBT community. It's kind of difficult to talk about these things or to bring awareness to these new words, new labels, new experiences. But like, if you do some research, you might actually find something that that works for you. There is language out there, and you can use it as a basis for making your own language if it doesn't quite fit. I guess I like to think of it as like, you were given these clothes that don't quite fit you, and I guess magically you're like a tailor or I was gonna say seamstress, but what's like the gender? A seamster? But you're a tailor, and you're gonna take that and but readjust it so that it actually fits you. That's what we're doing. We're all tailors. We're all being given these clothes that don't fit, these clothes that sometimes outright offend us. Like, the doctor gave me some clothes and was like, these are yours, and I'm like, this will never fit me, no matter what, because, you know, one day old me, sitting up in my little, whatever you put them in, I'm just like, listen, with my tiny baby fists, we can't, this doesn't work. Yeah, I think it's really important to have this information. I don't think anybody out there who's questioning their gender is going to be confused by the labels. I think they're going to be confused by their own experiences and the assumptions other people have about how they should be identifying, how they should be presenting, how they should be referred to. That's the problem. It's society that's the problem, not queer people making up words like they always have for a very long time. Like, that's just always how it's been. So, question of the week: if you're demigender, what does that mean for you? I asked this in my Discord server, and only one person replied to it, which is, I mean, it's fine. You can also still answer the question of the week in the comments. I will always respond. I'm on a 4-year streak of replying to every single comment I've ever had published to my channel, so doesn't count if it's like something that was filtered because it was spam or like something hateful that I like deleted. But I've replied to every single comment, so I will comment, or I will be in the comment section all the time answering or replying to your comments. So you can answer the question of the week even if you did not answer it in the Discord server. I just like being able to have answers that I can use for a video, and then when I'm done recording one video, I post the next question so that by the time the next video is recorded, I have an answer for that as well. So River in the Stormy's Galaxy Discord server says, whenever my gender shifts to demigender, it means I'm feeling partially like a boy or a girl and partially gray. I don't know how to describe it. That's just how I describe it through synesthesia. I don't know if the gray part is agender or what. And then they added at the end, I didn't realize I associated it with the same-ish color as the gray in the Demiboy or Demigirl flag. So yeah, I forgot this person has synesthesia, which is a really, like, I mean, it's a really interesting thing to think about, that people come up with, like, nebulous or abstract concepts to describe their gender. That's where I guess that's where the word xenogender comes from. I've seen that term, and it means, like, outside of the scope of human understanding of gender, but people will describe their gender using a lot of concepts, using language that has nothing to do with male or female or feminine, masculine. It's really, I keep saying interesting, but it is really interesting because over at the Gender Collector himself, which is my blog on Tumblr where I make flags and other graphics, I had come up with this concept of creating a color palette to describe your gender, and for a while I was making people custom-made flags based on their color palette, based on their pronouns, based on a lot of their interests, a lot of the things that define them as a person. I was making these flags, so it's really interesting to see someone bring up the color thing, because that's something I had been playing around with in my head for a while, like coming up with a color palette that describes your gender. So I don't know, it's really, I like that. I'll put up, like, the color palette I made for myself. It was something cool to, like, sort of, I don't know, it was a cool concept to play around with. I made this color palette in Photoshop. I mean, it just describes different aspects of manhood, of gender neutrality, of, like, other things I've talked about on this channel, like, regarding, like, how I feel about my gender and all that. So that's really interesting. I like that a lot. So yeah, if you want to answer the question of the week in the comments, I'll still respond to them. And I guess next week I am talking about sexuality. We had obviously an extra Monday this month, so I used that Monday, that 5th Monday, to, like, put out another Identity Talk video. But first Monday of next month, it just goes back to same old schedule. So Identity Talk that first Monday. It just seems like the two Identity Talk videos are very close to each other. It's because I filled that extra Monday spot with a bonus video to talk about me, like I always do. Yeah, next week we are talking about sexuality, which is going to be one heck of a ride, because I am really bad at talking about my sexuality, about my attraction to people, because it confuses me more than the gender thing, for sure. It is always changing, and I'm always overthinking it. But we will, like, dive into that, because complicated topics are really fun. It makes for content. But anyway, I hope everyone is staying safe out there. We'll get through this. I will have content for people to be able to, like, watch and enjoy. So, like, this channel, or if you want something a little, like, for more mature audiences, I have my gaming channel, which hopefully I'll remember to link below. I mean, it's pretty easy to find me on the internet and find my YouTube channel through there anyway, like on my Discord, my Instagram, I think, links to it, my Twitter links to it. So yeah, it's just something to keep yourselves occupied, if you're ever interested. I'm always making content. And yeah, I am signing off for now. See you later.